Did you ever work with her?
Cindy?
Yeah.
All right, reconvening as the Wicomico County Council in a work session for June 4th, 2019. First item on the open work session is the request to convene the Charter Review Committee. I know as council members, we've talked about this numerous times in all our discussions as far as the many charter amendments that we introduced over the last few years. So in those conversations, I know it had been mentioned before that, yes, there was a lot of work that needed to be done with the charter. My concerns here are the same concerns that we had when I was on the Charter Review Committee before. Wayne Strasburg was on that committee with me, so was Mark Kilmer. And, of course, no matter how many decisions we came to, no matter how many choices we came up with, we sent them to the county council, and they said, well, can't put it on the ballot because, we only want to put 3 or 4 on there, rightfully so. So my question to the council would be, do we seriously need to look at revamping the entire charter and bringing to the voters of Wicomico County a completely new charter? They had to do that when we transferred from a council form of government to legislative executive form of government. That had to be done, that had to have been done with the approval of a brand new charter. And I'm wondering if, as opposed to piecemealing this out, whether or not we feel that it is necessary, whether it's even a task that we can undertake or a committee can undertake to rewrite the entire charter altogether. There you go.
Well, you know what my gut reaction to that is?
What's that?
Well, I think that's a decision for the Charter Review Committee to undertake. Yeah, I think that may be one of their first jobs at this in terms of if they reconvene is, right, what direction,
Sure.
And make a recommendation to us, as to if they think that's the, if that's the case, or is there certain, or go about it like we're going about it, or, I mean, that's their purpose.
Right.
So, that's, that's, I guess, my gut reaction.
The first question is, who is the Charter Review Committee? Is there still a Charter Review Committee listed? And,
No, we would
Did you have to reappoint?
reappoint, yeah, thank you. We would reappoint a new committee. Sure.
I mean, it's worth discussing, and that's why we're here.
Well, since
Use your
this,
mic, Joe.
since this conversation come up, we're going to have a new council person come along, and they're not seated yet. We're going to have, so when would be the first time it could be voted on? 3 years from now, most likely?
Probably.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's too soon. I don't mean to say that, but I'm saying we have time to discuss it more. And I think it would be wise to at least wait until we get, full council seated before we approached it.
Hey, Joe, you want to hear this? I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you.
Mark that down. Before we approach it, full force, I guess is a good way to state that. Another thing I want to bring up is how we choose the committee. I remember before when we chose the committee that each council person chose 1 or 2 people, and
Is that
sometimes that
specified
worked
though?
out.
Is it?
Pardon me?
I thought there was some kind of.
We'll look into, I'm sure
Yeah.
there may be a process.
I remember, I think it says how we're supposed to choose, doesn't it say?
I would think
think
there
it
has
does.
to, we haven't looked at this yet, but there has to be a process on how you might appoint the committee. Because it's, how many have there have been, what, 2? Counting the one that revamped the entire charter, then there was our committee.
Yeah.
So there's been
Yeah.
2. We'll see if there's a policy.
Yeah, there's got to be
Procedure.
somewhere, but I remember that being part of it because,
But if
council.
that's the case, that's not a bad suggestion.
No, but,
Joe, now listen to this, I may not agree with you.
yeah, that's fine. So how do you think it ought to be done?
I haven't really evaluated that yet, but go ahead.
No,
Go
that's
ahead.
fine. I'm about
We got a
done,
ways
but-
to go here.
Yeah, like I say, that was one of the things that came up when we started talking, or I was thinking about how they do actually get appointed. But we have time to sort
true.
this all out.
It's true.
So,
Mark, oh, that's right. Josh? Sash, any comments?
I would just say I definitely think that we should take a look at it. I don't have any strong feelings one way or another, when or how, but I think it should be a comprehensive process, and I think it's much needed.
Wayne, not to put you on the spot, but I don't remember, do you remember the time frame as far as, and we don't have to do this tonight, but do you remember the time frame as to when the committee met, how long the committee took? And
John, I think it was around 6 months.
6 months?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
a pretty deliberate process,
Mhm.
you know, as it should be. And I think Mark is a council member who indicated that it was time to really take a look at the charter again. I certainly believe that we should look at the charter again. There are a number of what I would call inconsistencies in the charter right now that really ought to be addressed. I think some of the drafting language in the charter is too vague and is too open to differing interpretations. So I think that we should be looking at, okay, you know, how do we really clarify the intention of each section of the charter? So that was really where I was coming from, saying, look, we've got inconsistencies here. We have, for
And
lack of any-
inequities.
And inequities.
Sure.
And for lack of any better words, you know, we have some vagueness in terms of the drafting, and that's not good. You shouldn't have vagueness in your charter.
Well, we're constantly running into issues that, you know, we changed the charter to go to a county form of executive, or the
Right.
executive form of government.
Right.
But there was a lot of things that weren't changed in there as far as
Correct.
how it operated under the county form,
Right.
under the executive form of government. And how many times have we run into that in the
Yeah,
past
I
few years?
mean, we're
you know,
going through
so-
what I call a growth curve. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, we're, you know, we say we're, you know, 13 years into an executive form of government. In some cases, you can say, well, gee, that's a really long time, but I think we're all learning as we go along. And we've had changes in council members, we have changes in executives. So I just think it's a good time for the electeds to, first of all, to sit and talk about, look, where do we really see let's start with inconsistencies. Let's start with where we believe the language is not as concise as it should be. Let's start with where we believe there are imbalances, and start there. And I think that's a first start, from my standpoint, that's a first stop before we convene a charter review committee, because I think we need to come to some sort of a consensus, to the extent that we can, as to, look, where are the really big holes in the charter, if you will, for lack of any better term. And I think that's an appropriate first step.
Well, Mrs. Hurley was kind enough to contact Mako to see, you know, what they might recommend, and they did recommend, and she actually had, did you send that to everybody?
No, I did not.
Okay, yes, fine. She found through Mako that Montgomery County, similar form as ours, had a pretty solid charter. And that could be something that we could look at to maybe get a basis
Are
for
you
what
saying
we
that
need.
you want us to be like Montgomery County?
I hope
That on
not.
record.
And only in certain ways, right? Only in certain ways. But,
Yeah, I mean, we could look at Harford counties.
well, what was ours?
as
Was
well.
ours off Howard or,
I think we relied heavily on Harford
We
when
did
we
rely on
drafted
Harford.
ours.
Yeah, I think so.
And, you know, and they've been at this a bit longer than we have. There's several executive forms in the state, several charters. I'm just simply saying that I think, being on the inside of this, it's time for us to sit down, take a deep breath, and take a look at what we believe needs to be addressed in our charter. And if we don't do that, I think we're, for lack of any better words, not doing our jobs. This is
Well,
what we should be doing.
If it's recommended that the charter be reviewed every 10 years, you've got 3 councils with different people that are going to have a different idea, a different interpretation, a different opinion. So every one of them is going to look at things that we've ran into in the past and either recommend going to a full charter committee or having charter changes. So I think it's time to put a committee
What would
together.
our time frame be as far as what election cycle?
Well, I certainly think you want to seat your new council member first.
Understood.
And, you know, if our next, our next election is 3 years off, so
Yeah.
we've got a lot of time to look at this, but time goes very quickly. And I think some of the issues that we're gonna talk about are fairly thorny issues. They're not gonna be easily resolved. So I think that starting the discussion I would suggest he was appropriate once your new council member is seated, at least to put the things on the table that we collectively, executive and legislative branch, think need to be on the table.
And,
You know, let's put it out there.
and it'll
We
take,
have differences, we need to discuss
right.
them.
it'll take a lot of legal as well.
Wayne, I agree with you.
So do I, Wayne, for what it's worth.
You're out of here.
Any other questions? We wanted to bring it up to discuss it.
Yeah.
We certainly, as I think we're finding out now, it's not, I think, terribly important that we come to a resolution today.
Right.
But maybe we have to just keep this on the burner to know that probably within a year, we have to probably revisit this and get things moving.
It's under our radar, so we'll work on it.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you, Wayne. Next item on the agenda is the Special Legal Counsel, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, I've drafted what I would suggest as a form of resolution for the appointment of special legal counsel pursuant to the charter. It's based to some extent on concerns and comments that have been made during the period in which I've been the council attorney, about 2 years now. And it is, you know, it's essentially kind of like a contract, really, if you want to look at it that way. But I think it incorporates, as I say, matters that have been concerns of the council. And I can go through it, or if you've read it and have questions.
Why don't you give us just a quick overview
Yeah,
of like
just-
the Cliff Notes?
Yeah, well, just to begin with, for example, I'll run through the lettered subparts to it, beginning with A, which is supervising attorney. That's in there in the event that a firm is retained as a special counsel for a particular matter, so that there's a lead attorney that's going to be named. And it can change from time to time as that lead attorney might leave the firm or whatever. B is compensation and the contractual arrangement. I might add, to some extent, I've, based on my experience with a law firm, when we have dealt with what I would call larger organizations, insurance companies, title companies, to do special legal work, and I've used things that they look at, which I would think would be appropriate for the council to look at. And one of those would be, of course, what is the compensation going to be and what is the contractual arrangement with the particular lawyer or law firm. So that's B, to cover that aspect.
Bob, before we get too far, I don't know if it's in here or not, do we address anywhere, I mean, so many of these items can be very specialized. You know, it could be a human resource issue, it could be a contractual issue, it could be, you know, so,
Land use.
yeah, it could be land use issue, right, you know, and so just cause one guy's, we got a history with him, you know, doing one thing, doesn't mean he's good at land use. So is that addressed in here anyway to determine, you know, or who makes that decision, or how do we deal with that?
Well, I don't think that is something that would necessarily be addressed in the resolution. That would be addressed in whether you want to retain them or not in the first place. Now, as far as the type of work is concerned, yeah, that's right at the start, right in the title I've got regarding what it would be. I mean, it's not open-ended just to retain a legal counsel just to do whatever. For example, right now we have a bond counsel, and that's all they do. is work on the bonds. They wouldn't handle litigation if the county were sued, unless perhaps it might have something to do with the bonds. But, so that, I think though, who you want to retain and what their specialties are something to be considered outside of the resolution itself. And presumably, you would only retain somebody who was qualified and competent in the
But should
particular
we-
area.
But that's kind of my point, is should we actually have that statement or something, that the retention of like outside counsel should be qualified and competent in the particular area?
Well, I mean, we could certainly add something to that effect, that they have to maintain competency or something. I think that's getting
I'm
a
not
little,
saying
a
it-
little bit into micromanagement. I mean, I think it's the kind of thing like, if you don't like the services that are rendered, you cut the cord. Would be my thought on
I
that.
mean, I'm the last one
Yeah.
to be micromanaging,
Yeah.
but
Well, I think at the beginning, it says, you know, when they talk about what they're hiring them for, kind of
Right.
services regarding HR decision, HR issues, or, you know, that kind of nails it down to what we're using, you know.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I mean, if somebody came in and said, I'll give you a great deal as bond counsel, and they had never done it before,
Yeah.
and were basically litigation attorneys, I think the answer would be pretty quick. Get out of here.
So these are resolutions that would be put forward to the council to approve the hiring of
Outside counsel.
outside counsel under numerous different circumstances.
That's
So we might
right.
see 6 or 7 of these in a year, maybe, right?
Yeah,
Hypothetically.
for example, like right now, we have, as I say, we have bond counsel, we have also, don't we have a
Pension attorney.
pension
So my
attorney?
question would be,
Yeah.
Mr. Taylor, is there any type of resolution or legislation that would be necessary to enforce this policy or procedure of having to have a resolution in order to hire outside counsel?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question, but I
Do
mean,
we have
this,
something in place already that requires this?
Yes, the
the
charter.
charter, yeah, I
The
was
charter
gonna
does
say, yeah.
require.
Yes, it does.
But where we haven't done it, is it not required in writing? Or, I mean, because I guess we're thinking about this now because we've sort of been lackadaisical about it and we haven't been doing this at all, even though the charter has
Correct.
required it?
That's correct.
That is
Am I right?
correct. Yeah.
Okay, all right, so we're just trying to stick
Comply
to
with
what
the
the
charter.
process is supposed to be.
Now, do we have to be specific and list the types of special counsel or the need?
Well, I think this kind of dovetails with Mr. McCain's question or concern, call it what you will, that I think you would hire somebody to do a specific task. Because if you look at the charter language, you're only supposed to hire outside counsel if the county's law department can't handle it.
Correct.
I mean, that's a slight paraphrasing, but, so it would be matter-specific in that regard to begin with. And as I say, bond counsel, pension counsel are good examples of that. I mean, that's pretty highly specialized stuff. So, I hope I'm answering your question, but I mean,
I just don't want
it would
somebody
be
to-
covered in the resolution.
I just don't want somebody to go outside and say, well, it wasn't listed, and we went ahead and hired that type of attorney anyway.
That don't make sense.
So,
You don't
Mr.
hire
Taylor,
somebody
Well,
for
I mean,
everything.
bear in mind now, any resolution is going to come before council.
To everybody.
And you would know the names of the firms.
Would have
you
to be voted
You
on.
would know the work they're doing. As I've said in subpart B, you would have their,
But
presumably
Mr. Taylor, I think what
retainer
brought us
agreement.
here is
Yeah.
the council hasn't been brought to us.
Well, yeah, that's right, but I mean, that's the past. I mean, this is kind of looking forward
And I appreciate
for
that.
the future, yeah.
I just wanted to point that out.
The other problem, if you listed just the types of attorneys that he could hire, or anybody could hire, if you just listed, say you listed 10 types of attorneys, and
Yeah.
then suddenly you needed a different one that wasn't on this, they could say,
Yeah.
well, it wasn't on here, so we didn't have to come to you.
I mean, to give you a great local example, and this would involve Salisbury, but when they had the problem with the sewer plant, they hired an outside counsel from Baltimore who specialized in that type of highly technical contractual litigation. And, you know, that's an example.
Right.
I mean, if it were just a standard type thing, a collection case or something like that, presumably the county's law department can handle it. you wouldn't need an outside
Right.
counsel.
And some people don't realize that attorneys have specialties just like physicians do.
Well, very much so. Yeah, very much so.
Mrs. Hurley, do we not have something already on the books where, because I would assume at least once or twice in the last 10 years, a resolution like this most likely came across the table for a particular council?
Not to my knowledge.
But it should.
Okay, so this is pretty much a template, Mr. Taylor, that you're suggesting that the council could
Yes.
follow in order to initiate this process?
Yeah, that's correct. And I didn't go back and try to find anything else in the past. I think I did discuss it with Laura, basically, and I couldn't recall anything, and she certainly couldn't, and her memory's much more extensive on this than mine would be.
All right, well,
Yeah, go ahead, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Yeah.
I'm already sold.
Me too.
Talk yourself out,
You
you
got
want
a
to talk us
consensus?
out of it now that you got to stop into it?
Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, just moving on, it provides that council may contact, that this council, when I say council, may contact the special counsel to discuss things that he or she or the firm is doing. We've had some concerns about that in the past. That's C. Item D is that the special counsel and the attorneys that are affiliated with any law firm that would be special counsel won't become engaged in doing services for any county elected officials or employees regarding matters involving the county. In other words, not billing it and doing it for the county, but doing it for an official or an employee on a matter that involves the county without first getting approval from the council. Just to give you kind of an example, if the bond attorney was asked to do, if they did also do wills, if they were asked to do a will for a county employee, well, that wouldn't fall under this. It would have to be a matter involving the county before it would come within this item D.
Mr. Taylor, what happens if this search for outside legal counsel involves a personnel matter which we could not or would not want to pass in open work session, an open session through resolution?
Well, you would have to do it in closed session, to the extent that it can be done in a closed session.
I've never known that we could pass a resolution in closed session.
Oh, are you saying, I'm sorry, I thought you were speaking in terms of talking with the special counsel.
No,
after
I'm
they
sorry,
were
no, I was
retained.
going back to the broader picture, that if an issue were to come up that involves to some degree some type of personnel matter, we sort of backed ourselves into a corner because the only way that any legal counsel can be approved would be in an open session.
Well, if it were necessary to go into details about the particular personnel matter in order to decide on the special counsel, well, then I think that discussion probably could be held in closed session, and then you would vote in open session on the resolution.
Sort of a nondescript resolution.
Redact the name off of it.
I guess we can cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
Just
Yeah,
the personnel
the
matter.
interesting thing about that is, how many times already, what we're on C, we're already talking about several ifs and buts. There's gonna be unforeseen circumstances to anything like this, I know exactly why we're doing it, but sometimes you gotta be careful. The more specific you get, sometimes, as you just said, John, can back you into more corners than, do you want to create more flexibility, or do you want to get real specific? It's like I said, there will be
Well, I can
unforeseen
tell you on a lot of
circumstances.
times on the contracts we get from when I was doing this, from insurance companies and title companies, they're a lot more detailed than this.
You're right. Yeah,
Well,
this is
Much
two
more
papers.
extensive than
Yeah,
this.
well, I
you know.
think it has something much different than this. They're already providing the service. This is just how we're gonna go about using outside counsel.
And I mean, you can't avoid unanticipated circumstances. They happen.
Sure.
But,
So-
I think like for personnel issues, you could contract with an outside attorney for personnel issues in general, and then you could talk about any specifics you have questions about, that attorney has done in closed session, just to make sure that,
Yeah.
because you can't be, if there's a grievance or whatever, that's not county council business.
No.
And but, you can check up to make sure that the legal counsel is dealing with just that. I mean, I think you could write it, just say personnel matters, and then have, I think there's a report called for in the legislation and the resolution that you could then see, yeah, this is what it was for, without any details. And that
Okay.
could be closed session.
All right, that answers it. Sorry, Mr. Taylor, go ahead.
Yeah, moving on, item E, again, this is disclosure to the council about the work that's being done, a summary description, and then a copy of any letter that is sent by the special counsel to the county's independent auditors. Normally, when you're retained by an organization to do legal work, and this would include me for the council, we get an annual letter from the county's auditors and saying, you know, what do you know that's bad? I mean, in so many words, that's the type of questions that you're asked. So that's item 2 under subpart E. F, on May 1st of each year, something from the executive branch in meaningful detail that discusses the services performed and the bills, what is being billed, how much it's costing. G is to provide that the resolution has no force and effect until the special counsel sends to the council administrator written acknowledgement of the receipt of the resolution, and that in the event of conflict between the resolution and the contractual arrangement specified, that the resolution will govern, so that it's essentially the final word in terms of the relationship. And then it provides H, that it doesn't authorize the county executive or the executive branch to employ the special counsel for any services regarding matters other than those expressly described. This kind of dovetails with some of the questions that were asked about, well, how do we specify what they're to do and keep it from being open-ended? So that's the purpose of H.
Mr. Taylor, before you go on, F, on May 1st, should we get that information before May 1st? Because I know a lot of things can be forgotten.
Well, I was trying to have it as late in the fiscal year as possible in terms of your budget cycle. And I was afraid if I made it early, it wouldn't be as meaningful as if you have it later. And that's
I'd like
why-
to see that
that's why I
information
picked
when
May
they're done
1st.
using them.
Say again?
I'd like to see that information as soon as possible, such as when they're done using the attorney.
Well, that's certainly possible, yeah, on a kind of an event-type
could ask for
contract
it.
rather than a continuing one.
Instead of it all being dumped on our lap at one time.
Yeah, I can put, if you want me to, I can certainly suggest some language.
At the conclusion of the litigation or by May 1st if it's still being litigated.
Yes, sometimes I think, and I'm not sure about the pension council, but it might be the kind of thing that just is sort of ongoing, and there's no sort of end to it, because I think the pension council is probably retained to furnish advice on changes in the law as they occur.
It's been on a case-by-case situation. I mean, I do remember a special situation where the county hired an environmental attorney, so that would have been to handle a particular case. But such as bond counsel, that would be continuing.
But I was thinking in the pension, the only thing I was thinking there was, because of changes in the pension law that occur, that the agreement might be a retainer agreement that, you know, in other words, when something changes, you call us and tell us, rather than we call you and ask if there's been any change.
I'm not certain how often
Yeah,
they use the
I mean,
pension attorney.
yeah, with pension, I would think that would be pretty significant.
Yeah.
The bond counsel is probably on what I'd call an event basis. We're going to issue bonds this year. They do the work, the bonds are issued, and then that's the end of it. They have no continuing we have no continuing need for their services unless some question would come up, I guess, that would involve the bond counsel, some legal aspect of the bonds that have been issued where you've got to go back and ask questions.
Right.
All right, so, again, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Where does council want to go with this?
Should we send it to the executive's office for a review, see what their thoughts are on it?
Well, do you want me to do anything, though, that in terms of the comment that was made about getting more current information about the billings.
I would say, yeah, I'd say
Yeah, I can-
stating it once a case is concluded.
Either that or on demand, just put May 1st or on demand.
Let's thought, let me do this, I can probably today or, no, I'm not gonna do it today, but tomorrow, send you some suggested language for that. And just go around the horn if anybody has any thoughts on it. I'll try to make it more like on demand or at the end of a particular matter where it doesn't look like there's gonna be any further need for services.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and like Joe said, we can send this to the executive's office and let them take a look at it. And maybe they'd fill it out and send it back with a request to hire outside legal counsel to review it.
Bob, if I may, the way this resolution's written right now, it would only have to be approved one time, is that correct? So if for example, bond attorney, if we use the same law firm every single year, they would not have to come back before council for approval each year.
Well, I was hoping to set it up that way, yes, so it wouldn't need an annual update. I mean, if you all feel differently about it,
I thought it would be on incident. I mean, if you pass one resolution for doing a HR issue, and that's resolved, I mean, does that mean they never have to come back for another? I mean,
well,
that doesn't make a lot of sense.
I guess the difference is, do you want to look at it as a retainer agreement where they're available if something arises? Or do you want to look at it as what I call event-based?
I would think
type.
event-based would be better.
You're probably going to have a lot of resolutions. I mean, that's the only way I could put it, because, for example, bond counsel, I guess if you're going to do it that way, it would be every year,
Yeah.
Right.
or every time you issue bonds, which is normally once a year, but, and pension, I don't know how that would
I'm not
work.
certain.
That might be, I just don't know, I haven't looked at that, so.
But if you don't, you're just giving them a blanket resolution to hire outside counsel, and so it really isn't that effective.
Well, that has been somewhat the way it's been done.
Yeah, that's why
So-
we're doing it this way now, right?
Well, if you
Trying to get a better,
if you feel that it should be event-based, or if it's not event-based, like bond counsel, maybe once a year,
right.
okay, I'll put that in there.
I mean,
I'll do that, yeah.
I mean, isn't that the purpose? We're trying to get a handle on what really
Yeah.
is. What do you think, Mark?
I agree with you, Joe.
A lot of agreeing today.
Where should we go with this? Should we put this in front of the work session? I mean, is it at that I mean, what's your thought on that, Ms. Shirley?
My thoughts would be to send it to the county executive's office to get feedback from them,
Sure.
And then a work session.
Yep.
and then a work session.
Well, do you want me to put the changes in that we've discussed tonight, though?
Yes.
That should be something then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get that to you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate the work. I think we're done.
Yep.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
You're gonna get together every month to picture.
I forgot to mention that.
Get a picture with Mark.
Yeah.